So, as far as today's lecture is concerned, we are going to discuss about the types of gestures, yes, and how to gestures effectively. That is the important thing, because we are using these several gestures in our life, right, while we are communicating. But when we are talking about the point of view of speakers, yes, speeches, etc., and when you are going to deliver certain talks in any kind of in front of the audience, so you need to have the follow this certain type of gestures to make your communication effective. So, let us discuss that what is the requirement of this very good gestures. You know that the vast number of gestures are there in our life we are following while we are interacting in the family, while we are interacting with the friends, while we are interacting with the member of community, while we are interacting in the marriages, etc., okay, while we are interacting in the certain conferences and the events. But the number of movements, right, that qualify as gestures can be grouped into one of the categories which we are going to discuss in today's lecture. So, let us take a look on these very particular types of the gestures, and if I am talking about the gestures type 1, the first important concern is the descriptive gestures. Yes, descriptive gestures, we can understand that we have to clarify or enhance a verbal message. Yes, you are giving the verbal message to your audience, but with the help of the gestures you can clearly enhance a verbal message and the importance of the verbal message, that in how effective way you can communicate your message, like contrasts, right. When we are talking about the contrast in the concern of the gestures, with the help of this you can clarify your message effectively. Then another way in the case of the descriptive gesture is it's basically visualize the size, the size. If I am talking about the size, that audience, right, the large number of audience, like in this way, with the open, open palm, we can say, open handed, we can say. So that means that automatically gives the ideas that how I am predicting, how I am projecting, right, the number as far as the audience is concerned in the any kind of gathering, right. Shape, then the movement is also important factor. Location, if I am talking about the location, if I am predicting that in a hilly areas, right, like this, right, this is a gesture I am just giving to project the hilly areas. If I am talking about this, that's number, right. If I am talking about this ranking in the case of this global human development index, right, if I would say that Singapore is at number 1, right. Then if I am talking about the Norway at number 2, if I am talking about the Australia at number 3, right, these are the hypothetical examples which I am giving, right. But when we are talking about the location and the number and the objects, if I am talking about the objects, if I am saying that if this if I am projecting and objecting anything, if I am talking about the temple, right, that there is a temple which is very popular in the case of the historical monuments at Udaipur, right. If I am just giving a gesture, let's say temple, right, this gesture is clarify me as far as the descriptive gesture is concerned, and it enhances a verbal message as far as the communication effectiveness is concerned. So that the body language which we are using, that's helps us, right, to simplify our communication also. Yes, the second type of gesture is the emphatic gestures. Yes, so this type of gestures shows the convincing power. Yes, convincing power I am saying. If I am strongly emphasizing on certain words, right, with the strong feelings, right. When we are talking about the teaching in the classes, there are some unsocial factors sitting in the class also, which creates the nuisances, etc., right. But how we can show the anger, right, with the help of only our body movements, right, with the help of the gestures, right. by this eye movements, right, and the facial expressions. So that what I am saying, that the strong feelings, with the help of the strong feelings, emphasizing on that particular concern and the determination, right, the anger we can say. So these are the part and parcel of these emphatic gestures. So with the help of these emphatic gestures, that is the type number 2 in the case of the different type of gestures which we are following in our day-to-day speeches, or this or we can say the speaking, etc. Okay, and the convincing to the audience. Okay, that's the another way. Third type of gesture is the suggestive gestures. Yes, suggestive gestures, right, these are the symbols of ideas and emotions, right, because in a gestures we have certain ideas and we are having certain emotions also, right. So with the help of the gestures, it helps a speaker to create a desired mood or express a particular thought. Definitely, when an open palm, right, open palm, if I am talking about the open palm in this way in my gestures, that suggests giving or receiving, right. If we am talking about it is a give and take process, right, while we are interacting something, while we are initiating something, while we are sharing something with the audience, right. So the communication is what? Communication is the give and take process, but how with the help of the gestures I am conveying this to my audience, that is the important thing, and that type of the things we are including in the suggestive gestures. So that's another thing. But if I am talking, if I am not convinced on a certain part, right, then while shrug of the shoulders indicates ignorance. I don't know like this. If I am shrugging the shoulders like this, if somebody asks me a question, right, then I am giving simply these gestures in this form, this shrugging my shoulders. Sorry, I don't know that this in this way, that is the suggestive gestures. Okay, so gestures convey many things, right, in a simplest way, but again I would say that it requires lots of experiences. While we are talking about the gestures, especially in the case of the suggestive gestures, whereby we are using the symbols of ideas and the emotions and the feelings. Okay. Type 4 gesture is prompting gestures. Yes, prompting means this immediate reactions which we are doing in this case of giving the gestures, and it's used to help evoke a desired response from the audience. Yes, if you want to seek a desired responses from the audience, right, and certain upload, right, and to raise their hands or perform some specific action, prompting gestures has to be given in front of the audience. Okay. For example, are you aware that in the world we have 340 white elephants? That's how many of you know about this? So that is the prompting gestures which I am giving to my audience, right, to upload or to raise the hands, so that the number of audience which are sitting in front of me and I am speaking in front of them, they have to raise the hands immediately, that how many people are knowing that there are as much as number of white elephants in the world. Okay, that's the specific action I am requiring, and the prompt actions I am requiring with the prompt gestures, right, by surprising the audience. Definitely you will enhance the response by doing it yourself as an example, by giving an example that I know something with the help of this prompting gestures. Yes, like this. Okay, so in this way this type 4 gesture is we are talking about in the case of the effectiveness of the communication, and that how body language will help us in better presenting our views in front of the audience and simplify our speaking, simplify our communication also. Now there is a question again arises in front of us: how to gestures effectively? Yes, this is the important thing. Gestures, because gestures reflect each speaker's individual personality. Definitely every individual has certain personality, and it's not mandatory, it's not necessary that in the communication that everyone has to use the gesture, but with the help of the gestures, it is suggested that you can increase the effectiveness of the communication, right, by simplifying the meaning to the audience. Okay, that's the important thing. But what's right for one speaker probably won't work for you. Okay, of course, every speaker has its own ideology. Every speaker has its own traits. In the case of the personality, every the speakers has its own physical traits also, right? The tone also, the voice also, expressions also, facial expressions also, eye contact maintenance also. Okay, but as a whole, if I am talking about the generalized way that how you can improve the gestures effectively, and the following 6 rules which I am going to discuss in this lecture is applied to almost everyone who seeks to become a dynamic and effective speaker. Yes, there is a dearth of the dynamic and effective speaker, not only in India, across the world, and the speakers are working hard in this aspect, that with the help of the gestures they can convince their audience well, right. So here are the 6 rules which I am going to discuss one by one in this session. So the rule number 1 is respond naturally to what you think, feel and say. Yes, gesture is a natural process. Definitely it is a part of the personality trait that, and although it is a part of the experiences which the speakers have over a period of time while they are interacting with the audience and communicating something, but when you present a speech, you naturally express yourself through gestures. Okay, no matter what our personality or cultural background, because this everybody is from the different cultural background, and they are having the different kind of accent, they are having the different kind of the dressing concerns also, but maybe every one of us has a natural impulse to punctuate and strengthen our words with the gestures. Definitely everybody has certain traits, right, to behave naturally. If I am talking about the natural speaking, okay, for example, what kind of language I am using while communicating with the other people, right, especially in the case of English accent, that is important in the communication. Okay. So no matter what our personality or cultural background, it does not matter. Matter is that your main aim, your main concern, your main objective is that you have to convince your audience with the help of the gestures which you are showing, and naturally, so respond naturally to what you think about, what you feel about and what you want to say to your audience. That is the part of the gestures, that is the rule number 1. Then second very important rule number 2 is create the conditions for gesturing, not the gesture. Right? It is not necessary that you can find a very good place to show your gestures at every place. No, right? There is a problem of space, there is a problem of platform also, right? There is a problem of this audience integrity also, audience connectivity also, but your gestures should be a natural outgrowth of your own unique thoughts and feelings. Yes, feelings comes from your heart, feelings comes from your mind, and your mind convincing you that what kind of gestures you are showing, right. If I am emphasizing on this word showing, so that is the conditions I am creating, okay, as far as to convince that how I am utilizing the gestures. So they should arise naturally and habitually from your attitude toward the message you present. Yes, if I would like to present on the gesture, so that that comes from my attitude, right, comes from my this presentation skills also, comes from my personality. Okay, if I am using these gestures, comes from my personality. So that means I am creating the certain conditions, right, but not the gestures. Okay, So that is the rule number 2. According to the situations, what kind of gestures I am creating, that's important. Okay, but the gestures sometimes not always be applicable to every situations, and we have to handle all the gestures accordingly. Okay, so that is the rule number 2 in this case of how to give the gestures effectively. Now, come on the part of rule number 3, suit the actions to the word and the occasion. Yes, yes. In the previous slide, I have emphasized on that. Situation gives us the idea that which suits to our words and the occasion, while your visual and verbal messages must act as partners. Yes, your visual and verbal messages must act as partners in communicating the same thought or feelings, the same thoughts and feelings that comes out with the help of the gestures in front of your audience. But when a speaker fails to match gestures with words, the outcome can be wooden, artificial, and sometimes it's comical. Yes, definitely, because we have to understand the relevance of the gesture, right? We have to use the appropriate gesture which is basically meant and suited and matched with the action to the words and according to the situations. So every gesture you make should be purposeful and reflective of your words, right? So in this way, your listeners will note the effect rather than the gestures. Definitely, that what kind of effect you are placing in the mind of your audience, in the mind of the listeners. If I am using this way, the listeners, okay. So that is the rule number 3, that suit the action to the word and the occasion. In this case of this, how you can give the gestures effectively. Okay. Then the comes on the part of the rule number 4, make your gestures convincing. That's important, that you have to convince your audience. Your gestures should be likely and distinct if there are to convey the intended impressions. So a gesture performed in a half-hearted manner suggests that the speaker lacks conviction and earnestness, because determination is the important thing in this case while I am giving the gestures. Okay, I should not be idle, I am just keeping my hand like this and I am just going on and going on, and I am speaking like this in a static manner. So in this way, you cannot be able to make your gestures convincing. That's the important thing. While moving on the platform, right, by moving your eye on the audience, right. So a gesture performed in a half-hearted manner suggests that the speaker lacks conviction and earnestness. Okay, and that's the important thing. That's the important rule number 4, that make your gestures so convincing, so that your audience should convinced about what you want to say and what you want to communicate. That is the importance of the body language and the gestures. Now, come on the part of the rule number 5, make your gestures smooth and well timed. Yes, timing is important, that at what time, what gestures you are giving in connection with your words which you want to say to your audience. So the flow of a gesture required what? Balanced approach, then stroke, then return, then balance. Okay, balance, approach, stroke, return, balance. Okay, if I am giving this gesture, in this case, balance, approach, stroke, return, balance must be smoothly executed in such a way that only the stroke is evident to the audience. Yes, only the stroke is evidence to the audience, that click the mind of the audience in this case of communication while you are delivering your lectures or the speech. And the body language, of course, has a great relevance. We cannot deny the fact nowadays with the help of the body language, you can convince the large audience, large gathering, okay, without using, or we can say the minimum use of words you can use. In the case of the effectiveness, the communication, the gesture plays an important role nowadays. So this is the rule number 5. Make your gestures so smooth and well timed. That's the important thing. Then last but not the least, I'm saying that rule number 6, make natural spontaneous gesturing a habit. Yes, make natural spontaneous gesturing a habit to improve your gestures. Just practice. As I've already suggested you in my previous sessions, practice is the only thing. Learning is the only thing. Okay, but don't wait until the day of your speech. Okay, this is important, that practice until your speech comes. To improve your gestures, right, practice is the prerequisite. So make natural and spontaneous gesturing a habit, and that's automatically comes in your speaking process. Work on enhancing your gesturing abilities in front of friends. Yes, I have already told you that we are using several gestures, but we have to improve the gestures with the help of to communicate in front of the friends, family members, and our co-workers in the organizations. If I'm talking about the business communication, the gestures can convince, right? If I'm showing that, yes, we win, yes, this one, right? This is the gesture which I'm showing, right? And these are the natural spontaneous habits in case of this communication effectiveness. Relax your inhibitions, right? Gesture when you feel like it, and let yourself respond naturally to what you think, what you feel, and what you want to say, because it's a natural, and you have to practice yourself. That becomes the natural process. Through awareness and practice, you can make appropriate gesturing a part of your habitual behavior. Okay, so in this way, if I'm talking about the body language and the effectiveness of the body language, postures plays an important role, right? Gestures plays an important role, but we have to concern, very seriously that what kind of gestures and how I can use the gestures in association with my word actions, which I am going to tell to the audience. That's the important thing, right? So this is the reference. You can also follow this Toastmasters International. And thank you for today. I'll be coming up with my new session in the next lecture number 13. Till then, take care of yourself.